had a question.
Yes. How's it going?
It's going good.
I'm glad you were able to make it.
I know. I'm like doing CCS cases, and I was like, I gotta hop on.
Yeah.
So I'm 2 weeks out from step 3. I have like my schedule here in front of me. So I wanted to, it's like a personalized question, but I did NBME 9 through 13 so far. I couldn't find 14 and 15 like on that other website that you recommended.
Okay. You said 9 to 13 you've done?
Yep, 9 to 13. I'm doing the CMS step 2 like subject test. So I'll do all of those. Anything else that I need to be doing? Because I'm doing 10 CCS cases a day. In addition to that, I'm taking UWorld Sim on Monday, and then my test is on the 15th.
So 2 weeks out from step 3, exam is September 15th. I completed NBME's 9 through 13 and working on CMS step 2 exams. How many more of the CMS forms do you have?
Okay, so I did medicine, family medicine. I'm on internal medicine. So I have like the emergency, neurology, OBGYN, peds, psych, and surgery. So I'll finish that up this week.
Okay. And how much are you able to study per day right now?
Oh, so that's like a long time.
Like 12 hours, something like that.
Yeah, 12 hours.
So I would say your number one priority is to finish the CMS forms because they're going to be a little bit, I don't want to use the word easier, even though it's kind of accurate. They're a little bit easier than what you should expect on your step 3. And so these are like, okay, you need to be scoring 75, 85% at minimum on these CMS forms because like, let's say you miss 5 to 7 questions max on those. So I'll say aim to miss less than 5 to 7 questions max on these. If you're able to study for 12 hours a day, then you could technically, let's see, I mean, you could do about 3 or so of these a day, maybe even 4.
Yeah.
So the goal is going to be 3 to 4 CMS forms per day until complete. And so these are going to be helpful because this is the bare minimum of what they expect any competent physician to know. And so these don't go in as much detail as you're going to see. And that's like one of the benefits of it is it's a huge, quick, fast review. I really like that. Something that's been very helpful for a lot of students is the 2 high field scenarios. I'll show my screen here. Let's see if I can. So these right here, this is helpful. And basically it goes through 472 scenarios of things that I've seen tested. Okay. I would definitely advise to at least check that out if you can. Let's see. What other things would I have you do? And you're going through the CCS cases already. You said
yeah, I've done like maybe 70 so far.
Okay. That's completed CCS cases. How are you doing on those so far?
So anything that I get like maybe a 60 or 70%, I'll redo those the next day or a couple days later. So I want to make sure that I actually understand what they want. But the majority, I'm getting 80.
Okay, perfect. And I think that that's a pretty good area to be scoring at. Okay. A lot of students really worry about the CCS cases, but to be completely honest, I thought that they were not difficult on the real deal.
Okay.
And that's not just me saying it because I obviously teach this stuff. I'm just saying, like, I don't think that they were as hard as I expected them to be. Some people get in there and they say, oh, well, it was more generic than I expected. And I'm like, well, it's because they expect you to siphon in on what it is and kind of go through the diagnostic and treatment algorithm, which is fine. But I don't think that they really ask you super unreasonable cases for the most part.
Okay.
I think you're in a pretty decent position for that. I would say just review any of the ones that you've performed marginally worse on. So like, let's say you're scoring around 80%, 70%, anything that's any less than that, I would definitely say to review one last time where you can at least just scan through it and see what you had forgotten. But I wouldn't waste a huge, like monumental amount of time on that.
Okay.
And then as for the NBME's 14 and 15, these are worth getting if you can. Okay. You can actually get them from the NBME website if you can't find them online. Obviously, I can't advocate for getting them for free online officially, but that's also an option if you can find them. But they are recent, and at the end of the day, it's just more repetitions, like the literal NBME. And within the last 2 weeks of your exam, I would prefer you to be more NBME heavy with your studying rather than world heavy with your studying.
Yeah.
World is phenomenal, but at the end of the day, it's like a phenomenal resource that's not made by your test writer is still just a phenomenal resource. So I'm always going to advocate for as much NBME related content in the last 2 weeks. So review your missed questions, NBMEs 9 through 13, once more prior to the exam. Complete NBMEs 14 and 15. Review your CCS cases that you're scoring less than 65% on.
Mm-hmm.
Go through the 472 highest yield scenarios at least once. I usually recommend twice. And then the CMS forms, you should be able to finish those in the next about half a week or so, about 4 or 5 days if you bang through them with like 4 per day.
Yeah.
And that basically will take you right up until your exam.
Okay, sounds good.
These are the major things that I would say, hey, if you've done all these things, you've at least known, you've seen every major concept recently enough to your exam, because you've been through the secret archives. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I made flashcards too.
Okay.
I was like, I'm not, bombing this test. So.
Hey, I get that. The secret archives is basically like, obviously there's always, every single year they're going to include new things, and that's what I try and keep updating it as we go, basically every one of my resources. But at the end of the day, at the very least, this is going to cover the 80-20 of everything that's on your exam. And I actually had a student like yesterday send me a message on Instagram, and she like took a picture of one of the secret archives lectures with her phone on her laptop, and she was like, what do you know? The question that I didn't know on test day, right here. So it definitely, the stuff shows up.
Okay. Thank you so much for doing that, because I'm trying to stay stress free.
It's if you're not stressed a little bit,
well, yeah,
that means that you're not putting a high enough importance on it. And
yeah.
So just to give you some context, there's a couple different ways to look at this, and I'll let Kyle chime in a second as well, because this is up his alley. But I think there's 2 ways to look at it, and both are correct. So confidence comes from competence. So the more competent you are, the better you're going to feel. But at the end of the day, you have to have that edge. And the edge comes from putting an importance upon the execution of the task. And so obviously this is something that is going to, number one, solidify concepts that you just want to know as a well-rounded doctor. I mean, we all want to know that kind of stuff. But also it's like, all right, this is another chance to prove yourself. And that's a good feeling, It's a good opportunity to lock in and really showcase what you've been working on learning and knowing for the last few years.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't think I'd really add too much to that, to be honest. I definitely agree with like the competence and being competent in things, and I think that like that comes from just doing a huge volume repetitions, because like at that point it's just so familiar. You're just like, oh, okay, I know I can do this. It just now is a matter of like demonstrating that.
Yeah, agreed.
And actually, I went to a business conference 2 weeks ago out in Vegas just to learn on ways to make action potential even better. And one of the takeaways from the conference was exactly what Kyle just said. It's that volume cures everything. So it's the same with if you're studying for the USMLE as if you're playing basketball. The person who shoots the most shots is going to win. And that's what it comes down to. Like, there's always the studies or the stories of Kobe Bryant back from whenever he played, of how he'd be in the gym before even the janitor opened up the doors, because he'd essentially like break in the back door of the gym, and he'd already have 1,000 shots in before his second teammate would show up for the day.
Nice.
And it's no surprise that he had the best field goal percentage on his team. He was in there just taking the most repetitions. There's the famous picture of him with a broken arm still shooting one-armed baskets. So it's like, the volume is what matters, It basically is the cure-all for, there's all kinds of fine-tuning that we can do for your strategy. There's a million things that we can micro-optimize for, but brute force and volume is going to be what basically fixes any inadequacies or weak points.
I feel like that, like, I kind of get that IRL. I'm a second-year resident at this point. Like, there's only so much that you can, like, study about psychiatry or study about whatever, and you're like, okay, I have like 2 or 3 patients and I can handle this. But then it's like, what happens when you have like 10 or 11 patients? And it's like the only way that you get better at seeing people really fast is by seeing a ton of people.
Yeah.
And you just have to sit there and just do it as fast as you can. And at that point, like, you just don't even care about like necessarily how you're doing. You're more just like, okay, I just have to do my best, and whatever happens. And just through that process of just kind of letting go of your, like, oh, I got to focus on how I'm doing every single little thing. You just kind of get in that flow state. And then the next time you do it, you're like, wait a minute, that wasn't like as overwhelming as I thought it was going to be. And it's just because you had the volume. And I think that really has helped me do stuff better, is just to do it in a really stressful environment, but really doing a lot of reps. And I think it's the same thing with test questions.
Absolutely. And one thing to add on to that, I remember my first year of residency, when you're taking patients, like, on a chill service, they might give you just like a handful of patients. On some of the more intense services, they might give you like 5 to 10, maybe even 15 if you like are really short on staff. By the time that you're a chief on the vascular service, you'll have an entire list of like 30 plus patients that you're responsible for. And then you got to go to another hospital and round. And so that's obviously not doable at the beginning because you haven't seen the volume, but that sheer amount of volume just allows things to start being automatic. And one thing that I created to help with that can also be helpful for you. I'll share my screen. It's called the diagnostic and treatment protocols. And so this right here is something that just is to add to the volume. So for example, what you do is you fold the sheet in half and you basically are testing yourself. Okay, can I answer what the diagnosis for HIT is? And then can I answer what the treatment is? If you can't, okay, cool. Look at the other side of the paper. It's going to be your direct thrombin inhibitors or fundaparinux is the treatment. And then here's the diagnostic criteria. Boom. And it's literally just like every day, just those repetitions of, can I tell you the diagnosis? Can I tell you the treatment? Can I tell you the diagnosis? Can I tell you the treatment? You know, like that repetition is really what makes the big difference at the end of the day. It's all volume. And you can study the most well-constructed resource in the entire world, but if you only look at it once, it doesn't matter. It's the repetition. And that goes for step 1, step 2, step 3. At the end of the day, you just got to be the person that's waking up earlier or staying up later and getting the work done. Obviously, within reason, you have to have good sleep-wake cycle, work on your overall general health. Nothing else matters if you sacrifice your health, but you have to be that level of consistent. And so whether it's having an accountability partner that studies in the same location as you, whether it's setting reminders on your phone, putting your Google Calendar every single hour of your day, whatever it is that works for you, execute that. And that goes for my students as well, studying for step 1 and step 2. Like if you are the person that studies 6, 12 months for an exam, it's basically improbable you're not going to do well if you've been putting in the work every day. I mean, realistically, like the times where I've seen a student do poorly that has put in that volume of effort over that period of time is very, very slim to none, because there's always times when you're getting distracted for 2 to 4 hours, looking at your phone, scrolling, going out, whatever it is. And sometimes you just got to eliminate those instances and burn the boats at this point in your career. And I remember back for my step 1, I actually got rid of my iPhone and went purely to a flip phone for the 6 or 7 months prior to the exam. And that one decision single-handedly enhanced my focus by like 50%. And it was just a sacrifice I had to make. I wasn't texting friends. I wasn't calling friends. I wasn't getting on social media. It was like, hey, this is what's happening. I texted like my 10 or 15 closest people in my family and friends, let them know that I only got so many texts per month that I could send them, so it's not going to happen, and lock in for the period. And so if you got to do something similar for the next 2 weeks until your exam, that's what you got to do.
Thank you.